management, or sponsors. AMP2.TV presents Tell Us Your Business, where you're invited on the air to tell us what makes your business stand out in the community. It's important we hear from you to tell us all we need to know about what you do best. Tell Us Your Business uses the latest radio and television production systems, and all shows can be seen on AMP2.TV. If you have a question for our guest, call 888-565-1470. Now, let's get ready as our guest hits the airwaves and informs us about what we need to know on Tell Us Your Business.
We're live on... Hello. Good morning on Tell Us Your Biz. And I wanted to welcome everybody. Today I'm going to talk about hurricane preparedness, and I'm live on my page, which is Florida Severe Weather. And just to tell you a little bit about that, I'm going to give you a little update on how I started and got into everything and how I wanted to help everybody. I see everyone's joining me on my severe weather page, so I'll be kind of looking this way and that way at the same time. But years ago, I started because of the Hurricane Andrew, and I saw the need of having such devastation to such an area that did not have warning. So I figured I had to get into meteorology. I was actually going for fashion, interior, and design, but I was a complete weather geek and still am. And 'tis the hair today with the weather out there today. In the last few days, we've been really struggling with some severe weather here in South Florida. And I know you guys all know that. And so I'm here today so I can answer some questions. And if anyone wants to call in and ask, the phone number is 1-888-565-1470, and you can call and ask questions about the season and what to expect for the season. And I know I fill you guys in all the time on the weather site, but being on the radio show today is kind of a helpful way to gather everybody together. And also we're going to kind of promote this for the future for the page to collaborate with the Brooklyn Cafe. So that way we can get some advertisers on our site as well. And if you want to get some package deals with us and be able to do maybe a live show on the Brooklyn Cafe, which I do periodically, as well as this radio show here, we can do some interviews and things like that. And we can talk about that at another time and set up some prices, etc. That's just the business aspect of it. But I wanted to definitely let you know about the season because I know we might have a little bit of a busy one. We do have the El Nino kind of affecting. It's a strong El Nino, and so that's going to basically create our waters to be quite warm. But so I do expect more number storms. However, I do expect to have the winds being decreased because we're going to have a lot of wind shear. When you have an El Nino, you have a lot more wind shear involved in that. And when that happens, it keeps the strength of the storms at bay, but it definitely will not minimize the number of storms we have. And a lot of times the wind shear will turn those storms away from the coast. But being prepared is so important. So I wanted to see if I can answer some questions. I have someone here with me today that'll ask a couple things as well. And then we can see from there if anyone wants to ask me online as well or call in and let me know what you're thinking about. So do you have any questions you want to ask me?
Yes. My biggest question is there's a gray line, when do you evacuate, when do you stay?
Right.
When you see a hurricane coming, they say it could shift this way, shift that way. You never know where to go, what to do sometimes.
The problem is a lot of times when we give a lot of time for notice here in Florida, which is a great thing. And I like to give a nice advance notice for people, and it gives them the opportunity to do so. It kind of boils down to you have to realize we're in a very thin peninsula. And when you're in that very thin zone, we have so many millions of people that have to evacuate at one time. If you're not going to evacuate early, at least 5 days before, don't bother. Stay home, prepare, get your home prepared, shutters. You can go to Florida Severe Weather on my Facebook page, and right at the top, pinned at the top every time, there is a list of everything you need to do, and that way, preparedness is more important in that sense if you're not out in 5 days. And that, but so many people get stuck on the street because they wait to the last minute, hope that storm's going to curve, and when that storm doesn't curve, now they're stuck on the road. And that creates a huge danger to rescue, to you, to everybody else. And then you're not even home anyway for your house, and have that prepared or taken care of. So it's actually better to stay put, especially for Category 4 and below. Category 5, I mean, if it's pertinent, it's more rare. A lot of times those size of storms do tend to turn or weaken before it hits the coastline because of wind shear. But we all have to understand that you're only in that eye wall. And a lot of people, we have a lot of newbies in Florida, and I know you don't understand quite as much as the Floridians that have been here and through so many storms, which I've been through: Andrew, Francis, Wilma, Jean, Charlie. I've been through so many of these storms, and each storm has a legacy and each storm has a story. But in retrospect, if you're not in that immediate eye wall, you're going to be fine. I mean, we have so many Florida storms and afternoon thunderstorms like we just had the last few days, and we've had tornadoes and hail and everything. And so we're a tough crowd, we're a tough group of people. We know how to take care of ourselves when it comes to Florida storms. But if you're not prepared by 5 days early to leave, I wouldn't leave. That's pretty much my basic answer on that one. So I didn't know if you had any more questions. Let me see if I have anyone here that's asking. Yes. Oh, hi, Rosemary. Hi, Alicia. What is the difference between El Nino and El Nina? Good question. Well, El Nina actually is when the waters are colder, and that's actually a benefit for having a less storm season. And El Nino is basically the warm season of the water and the hot water temperatures. And unfortunately, what that does is create the storms to be more frequent, stronger, but also in retrospect, it also creates a lot of wind shear patterns. So with that, it creates the storms to dissipate. At least the strongest storms will start to weaken if you're in the El Nino season. So in other words, you have a lot more storms, but the storms you have normally will be sheared apart a lot more often. So if you're in an El Nino season and you tend to have a severe storm, a big storm, Category 3, 4, coincidentally happen, which it could, your wind shear is a lot less. So unfortunately, you don't have that opportunity to have that wind shear break it down. So it's kind of a weighing situation of the good and the bad. I think it's a little worse, unfortunately, to be in the El Nino season, so we're going to be active. So we're going to see storms coming and coming and coming. So, we just have to be prepared for that. Hi, Jason. We're doing good. Got any questions for me? Give me a shout out, and I'll answer some more for you. But meanwhile, I almost shut you off. All right. So we got a live thing going on here too. So I'm doing two things at once. But I also wanted to inform you about on the weather page. If you go to the top of Florida Severe Weather on the Facebook, it has to be on Facebook. And if you're on the top there, and you can go through all the hurricane preparedness. I think the number one thing is to get your refrigerator, get your food storage, get your water prepped, get your generators, because generators are so important. Really, in Florida it is, because it's so hot. And I remember during Andrew, it was just miserable. We didn't have any of that stuff, so that was just really bad. But I went down to Miami, and I helped during the recovery efforts, so I kind of learned a lot of what you need to prepare. But there's so many things you can do. You can prepare your bathtub. You can fill it up with water so you can flush your toilets. There's so many things that you don't think about when your power goes down, because normally you will have power outages. It's inevitable. Everyone's going to have power outages. Some people are only 3 days, 5 days, but some people can be 18 days. I've been without power both storms for 18 days, so it was pretty rough on Francis and Wilma. 9 days for the, no, Francis and Jean were 18 days for me, and then 9 days for Wilma, and the last one, Matthew, was about 6 or 7 days, so it was getting a little better. But I learned how to prepare the house, and that's what you need to do, and definitely shutter up and aluminum shutters. I don't know if anyone asking about that, but I would definitely use aluminum shutters over any other wood. A lot of people I see put the wood up. I mean, if you have nothing, that's better than, absolutely nothing. But taping does nothing. That's a folklore. So, putting the tape on the windows, that's just not going to do anything. So you have to actually put the aluminum shutters, or at least wood, to protect those windows, preferably aluminum shutters. And generators are number one, like I said. Batteries. You have to have your batteries, your C batteries, everything else. That just in case you don't have a generator, you definitely have to have your batteries to use your weather radio. You need to have a secure weather station for you. Make sure you have it on digital now, because things are not, everything's digitalized. So unfortunately, you have to keep everything. I have my weather radio and my little weather TV station, and you have to make sure that everything is digitalized now. So if you do have those old radio station, your old radios and things like that, check your hurricane box. Make sure that they're in digital format now, so that way you can still keep, getting updates and everything else. Let's see. Joe said, Matthew just missed the east, Irma a bit to the west. How lucky are we? I know. But I mean, that unfortunately is what happens Matthew actually just missed to the east because it went south of us, but it curved north and went on the west coast by Fort Myers. I actually knew that. That's why I stayed home. So I was kind of keeping everybody at bay with that one. Whoever's been following me for years knows basically that I stayed put in where I live in Palm Beach County, because I knew that was going up to the west coast, and I got everybody over there prepared and made sure people were getting into their evacuation sites and zones and et cetera. That's another thing you need to make sure is know your evacuation areas, know your zones, know your shelters. And also on the top of my page, I have links that will take you for airport information. So if you have friends entering or exiting, or if you're planning on exiting through air flight, you can check about airlines and who's going to be shutting down and who's not. I have links on the page for pets, because there's a whole bunch of information on how you do pet safety and pet security, and make sure they have their prescriptions, because they're just like us. They need to be taken care of as well. So you need to make sure that you have everything for them, with food, water, medication, just like you would for yourself. Make sure you have your prescriptions, at least 2 weeks of prescriptions to cover for that. And and then I'll let you know a little bit more about the link about the hotels. Remind me if I don't, but I want Dave, you can remind me if I forget. I want to make sure to keep talking about the pet hotels as well. But I have a question here I want to answer. The predictions that are calling for this season, I'm saying that it's above moderate, because we are in an El Nino situation. So I'm going to say that it's going to be active and above average. However, I think we're going to see the storms they're going to be pretty strong out in the Atlantic later in the season. In the earlier part of the season, it's going to be, we need to keep an eye around the Gulf, the Caribbean, things like that. Those should be pretty active, because the waters already are pretty warm. As you can see, the storms just this week and this weekend, I kind of was watching out in the Gulf of Mexico, that one little system, and I said, okay, if it wasn't being pulled up into that front line, then that could have potentially developed off the front, off that coastal front line. So last year we did have our first named storm, a week before, actually, or 2 weeks before. I believe it was 2 weeks before June 1st. So it was Alberto. So it's a possibility in an El Nino season that we could even have storms earlier than June 1st. So I would start preparing now and just make sure you have everything. That way you don't have to worry about it at the last minute. You don't have to deal with the crowds and the chaos and all that kind of stuff and the shelves going empty. So make sure you do that. I got another question here. Oh, thanks, Mark. I hope it is. And just ask some more questions. You guys are all on here, so give me some. Let's see, live in Wisconsin. Hey, Wisconsin. I live near a lake. Well, do you live? You live near a lake in Wisconsin. Well, this is about Florida, but I can tell you that in Cape. Well, yeah, everybody does actually. If this person's asking about a storm in Wisconsin, they live near the lake. With tornado capabilities of hitting them. Everyone does have a capability, especially if you're living off a lake. You can have even water spouts spin up and turn into a tornado. So, yeah, you do have a capability of doing that. It's nice to see you, too. But back to, I remember, back to the animal shelters and everything else. In the state of Florida, and mostly every hotel in the state of Florida, when you're under a warning, a hurricane warning, and you have to evacuate, so it's an evacuation warning, the hotels have to accept your pets. So, and also there's many shelters that accept pets as well, and there's a lot of Airbnbs, and I have links on my site. So you can go to the pinned or under my announcements on my page, and you can get all the links that'll attach you to all the local shelters and Airbnbs and bed and breakfasts and hotels that already accept pets even earlier than when you're in a warning situation. However, when you're under a warning in the state of Florida, it was a law passed that the hotels do need to take in your pet as well. So that kind of helps out with people wanting to stay when they really should evacuate, because that's kind of the reason why, well, between you helping you all and wanting to be home, watching the storms and taking care of you guys, I have many pets. I have lots of cats and dogs and fish, and I want to make sure my pond is running. So all those type of things you have to think about in advance if you have, other types of animals as well, horses, etc. So there's a lot of different types of evacuation preparedness you need to be dealing with. Rosemary's asking, are you going to regular live feeds on there or when there is a named storm? Yes, actually, Rosemary, I will be. I'm getting it all set up that we can hopefully live stream even through the Brooklyn Cafe. And that way, either on this show here, we'll put some live feeds out. Brooklyn Cafe, I'll be putting live feeds out. Podcasts, we'll be doing that as well. So that way we can hit a lot more people at one time. So please share this with everybody so that way we can, just make sure we help more people at one time. I got another question here. We used to live in Memphis where tornadoes can be quite strong. Why does the southeast Florida not have as near strong of tornadoes? The worst I have seen reported is EF1. You're right. Well, actually, Orlando had an EF4 at one time. It was probably now about 12 to 15 years ago. Don't quote me on that, but I do know it was about that long ago that there was an EF4 in Orlando at night, and unfortunately nobody was prepared for that. It just came through, and no, Florida does not see that type of storm EF or that strength of tornadoes normally, and that's indicated. Basically, it's because of the way our wind, where we're set up with the peninsula, and we have the water, the Gulf. Because our tornadoes are basically because of convergence between the Gulf and the Atlantic, and we have like uprise and severe storms and a lot of billowing clouds and et cetera over the peninsula, but our peninsula is very thin, where the storms across the Midwest and Tornado Alley, et cetera, it has a lot more time to generate that steam and a lot more time to generate this friction on the land. And then when they have their tornado situations, it's basically just between the cold and the hot and the convergence going up, where we have the hot and we have somewhat cold coming down, but not as different of a convergence zone, meaning not super, super cold next to really, really warm, where in the Midwest they might have 10 degrees with a front line moving through with 70 degrees or 60 degrees in front, and that creates a great convergence and shearing. And that creates the huge tornadoes along when you have that warm, moist air from the Gulf going up into the Midwest, where we have them from the Gulf, but normally it's from the east and the west, and they just converge over the state, and it doesn't have enough time to really generate that size tornado. That's basically the reason why. Thanks, Scott. You are correct. You know Scott Cadet. I have Dave here with me today. Scott, hi, Scott. He said, Chewy's not a pet, he's your co-pilot. You are absolutely correct. So service dogs, definitely, it's a whole different story, and we can talk about service pets as well. You never have to worry about where you go with the service dog. They always have to go with you. So, yeah, you are right. He is my co-pilot. He is right here, laying on the floor quietly. Let's see what Stan's asking here. I'm watching, hopefully, give him to go ahead and golf. You always ask that, Dan. Well, Dan's asking if he can go golfing on Thursday. Yeah, things are going to look better on Thursday, so go golfing. Let's see. Tornadoes generate more steam over land versus over water, like we have in Florida. You're absolutely correct, but I think he was talking about the Midwest comparative to, and we, in Florida, we are the number one. It's a little odd because we're one of the number one. We are number one in lightning, the lightning capital, thunderstorms, severe weather, tornadoes. Believe it or not, but like the gentleman said, more E1s to E0, E1s, but because we have so many little ones, we end up having more of them, and we oddly enough are the capital of tornado. But we also, the Panhandle area is part of Tornado Alley. So in all retrospect, we are included as the number one Florida capital is the tornado capital, but weaker ones, luckily. And you got to remember, in hurricanes in the northwest, up in the northeast quadrant of the storm, generates a ton of tornadoes. So that's kind of where you never want to be, in that section of the storm, and that'll also count for the amount of tornadoes we have per year. Let's see if we have any more questions, and we do. You're welcome, Dennis. I'm glad it's informative to you. And I don't know if we're going to do a commercial break or not, because I know it's about time for that. Are we, no commercial breaks? All right, we'll keep going. So, let's see, I got another one. Yeah, okay. Well, I think our first name storm is Andrea this year. So, but again, that list is on my page as well. But Andrea's the first name storm. And I don't see anything, everything's looking good right now. And I do see the Gulf, though, a little bit more active coming off of Texas. I do see activity that we could potentially have some weather occurring at that time to keep an eye on, kind of like what I was watching yesterday. And other than that, the Atlantic isn't going to be for about, I would say, May. June and July are definitely the Caribbean. My most active area is by the Yucatan. That's kind of the area I watch a lot, because they can move off the African coast, but they develop by the Yucatan. And then a lot of times this time of the year, the earlier season, they generally will curve up towards the state of Florida. So you can get them along the west coast or going up straight up the coast or straight down up the center of Florida. So, that's something that I usually kind of keep an eye out on the area there, more even so than the Gulf of Mexico. But occasionally, they come off of Texas, and that'll hit more towards the Panhandle area. So for my viewers up in the Panhandle, yeah, definitely, I keep an eye out for the Gulf of Mexico and Texas for the brewing storms. But the Atlantic coming off of Africa, that's normally more July, August, and September 1st is peak season. So that's when it's the most active. So to answer that question, the most active time is September 1st for hurricane season. But you certainly have to prepare well in advance, because I don't want to see people having a panic attack, because I know a lot of people are on my site that I got to keep looking to see if people are asking questions. But I know a lot of people get a little worried about their parents, because you guys, some people live out of the state, some people I know on my site live out of the country. So make sure if you have family members or your parents are elderly here in the state of Florida, make sure you know where their evacuation sites are and where they would need to be, and get their protection. And that way, again, you can have them call in advance, you can have them prepared in advance, you can have food, you can have storage prepared in advance for their house. They can prepare, have their things taken care of before you evacuate them. Because I know I've had people call from even Budapest in the last storms, and I've helped their elderly parents into a shelter because they just had no idea what to do. And so this is the time for you to get started and get prepared on gathering your information on what to do. So I just want to make sure before I answer. Well, check camera, it says. Okay. Oh, yeah, I see that. The camera on the show right now is working, but I'll figure out what's going on with the live stream. I'm not sure what that is. That's a bit strange. Okay. Well, I will work on that for you, but you can still answer questions. I'll be back with you in a minute. Yeah. Good night.
This has been Tell Us Your Business, where a special guest comes on every week and tells us what they do. All shows can be seen on amp2.tv, and if you wish to be a guest, call 866-224-5422 and tell us about your business. That's 866-224-5422. This has been an amp2.tv production.